So today I want to explore Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce's compatibility. I'm going to use the Vedic method of compatibility, which is called the kuta score, the kuta rating, which is based on the moon's nakshatras. And then I'm going to use some of the more popular Western methods of compatibility, which is usually the composite chart and then the planetary synastry, or how their individual planets are interacting with each other. I think that'll be fun. And then we can see, when we use all three, we can kind of see, compare the three and see what results each are giving. So let's see if this is going to be a relationship that withstands the test of time, or something that just is fireworks at the beginning and then fizzles out.
All right, here is Taylor and Travis's compatibility. I have both their charts right here, overlaid on top of each other. Taylor is the blue on the outside and Travis is the green on the inside. And here is that kuta score I was referring to. I just made like a 15-minute long recording and I listened to it, and my air conditioner was fudging up the quality. So I hope this works. This video doesn't seem to want to be made. So they have a score of 10, and the highest you can get is like 36. I rarely ever see scores higher than 31. Most married couples I see are 20-ish, lower 20s. And the lowest score for a married couple I've seen is 14. So with this, and we'll look at their chart too to see what could be making up for a low score like this. But basically the kuta score takes the moon nakshatras is the Vedic technique, and determines a whole bunch of ways that a couple can either grow productively with each other, be on the same emotional wavelength, or or if they're very different. So Taylor and Travis are very different people emotionally, and that's just going to require a high capacity to have a healthy relationship for this to work. The married couples who have stayed together that have a score like 14, or something that's basically less than 17, is that they're otherwise very happy, healthy people who know how to relate to each other in a productive way. They're not bringing a bunch of baggage, or they don't have those toxic traits that will basically very quickly ruin a relationship, even a relationship with high compatibility. If a couple has a high score, but they don't know how to have a healthy relationship, it's really not going to matter too much, because they'll end up ruining their good compatibility through their poor capacity, basically, if that makes sense. So it just takes some extra work in understanding the other person. I can go through all of these to kind of give a little bit more detail about the ways that they're different or similar. In the kuta method of compatibility, they start off with these very, they give a lot of importance to these first four things. The first one is whether or not the relationship is obstructed in the first place. So sometimes you see people trying to come together and have a relationship, but there's just things outside of their control that really seems to be obstructing the relationship from coming together. You see this a lot especially in countries where the family has a lot of say in who you marry, and if anybody disapproves of it, that's going to be considered an obstruction, something like that. So they're fine. This is a relationship that they're able to come together and have their relationship. There's no outside forces stopping it from happening. This other one right here, Raju, if that's pronounced correctly, this would rope them to misfortune if this wasn't okay. And it sounds dramatic, but these things do happen. And in fact, having this blemish on your compatibility, if you had a really high score for compatibility, would be pretty painful, because you'd be trying to have a relationship with someone and have really good compatibility, but then all these things would keep happening. Just these unfortunate events or things that would prevent you from being able to enjoy a relationship together, because there would be a lot of stress and basically a lot of unfortunate events. So they're fine with that. That's not present. So this next one shows who is better able to anticipate the emotional needs of the other partner. And this compatibility wants the man, so these are based on, heterosexual relationships between a man and a woman, but this compatibility method wants the man's moon to be moving closer to the woman's. And the reason for that is because the action usually comes from the man. If he can't anticipate what she needs, then, she's not going to be happy. And I do find this one to be less of an issue. So if people don't have this score, then I think with good communication and otherwise good capacity, I think it can be worked out. I think people can just talk about what their needs are, really. But it basically indicates that Travis will take longer to understand or, figure out what Taylor needs. And so it's going to take him longer to act. And she may have to wait longer to see him taking actions that, make her feel good. I've seen this be good. Like, I've seen couples have this and, it doesn't really seem to mean that much. That's just been my experience. So, keep an eye on this one. See if you feel like it's really making a big difference if you use this method of compatibility. And then this last one in this first category of 4 is basically kind of a similar thing, a wavelength thing, like who can better anticipate the needs of the other person based on the sign. Basically, the sign of the man's moon is 6 places away from the woman's, so that's inauspicious according to this. But they do have one of the exceptions met, which is that the lords of their moons are friendly and they have a friendly relationship to each other. So no points are given for that, but it does negate any of the difficulties that could come from this compatibility not being there. Then there's naughty, which is, there's 3 different types. There's fiery, windy, and watery. Yeah, watery. And ideally you want people to be in different naughties, because if they're in different naughties, then they balance each other out. And if they're in the same, then it'll create this similarity with the 2 people that causes an issue. So it says that when it's windy, the couple, there's just a lot of activity in this relationship, a lot of things going on that starts to feel ungrounding and unfocused, like they're never able to come together and kind of focus towards something because there's so much stuff happening. Another thing I see with this is people, they can, together they tend to deal with things in a really practical way where the emotions become like put on the sidelines. Like, let's deal with this in a really like rational, cerebral way, and then the emotions just kind of become pushed away. But I don't know. I'm looking at their chart and I see some things that would make that not the case. This is whether or not they're able to be constructive together. That would give 8 points total. They don't have that. I think they do have one exception. They really don't. They have the exceptions to that would be if this were okay and if this were okay. And so I think based on what the exceptions are, you could probably give like 2 points to this. Oh, then there's Yoni, which is said to be like a slight degree of sexual compatibility. There would be 4 points total, but they don't have any of those points. And I find it more like if the couple can bond through intense experiences together, because everyone kind of deals with emotionally intense situations differently, and some really come out of that together strong, and others get kind of thrown off by it or freaked out, and they don't bond through those types of experiences. So they're just different in how they deal with emotionally intense situations. And on that topic, we can see from the chart that Travis is just, I guess, a much more sexual person. Whenever you have Venus in a sign of Mars, that really amps up the sex drive. And then he has Mars in a sign of Venus. So he's got both those things going on. And it's just a different type of sexuality. She doesn't have any of those things that would make a person like give a super high desire nature, I guess you could say. And because he has his Venus, that really sexually charged Venus on her ascendant, and then the Mars in her 12th house, which is associated with bed pleasures, she's probably having like a lot of new experiences with him, or he's just rocking her world. I definitely think like that's probably one of their points of attraction for sure, is like because sometimes you have people who they don't have like that super mega drive, but then they get with a partner who does, and that partner kind of really like exposes them to all kinds of new things, and then they are just kind of like really enamored by that. But as things go on, they can't quite match that really sexual partner. Like, in the long term, it's harder for them to match that. So, yeah, I think sexual compatibility is there, or at least that's part of what's bringing them together. What is and then some of these are just weird, this is like a caste system type of thing where the idea is that a man is a little bit more set in their ways. They're a little bit more fixed or steadfast in how they are, whereas a woman is more adaptable, and they're more likely to change a little bit to meet meet the man. So they want the man to be the one in a higher caste, so that the woman will just adapt his better qualities. Sounds a little bit archaic, so they don't have that. Mahendra, that's like a really just special affinity that they feel towards each other that can compensate for some of these lower scores. And then Vazia is like a magnetic attraction, and it looks like Travis does have that towards Taylor. Okay, so that is a quick summary of their kuta rating and how that can work. let's look at their chart together. There's some classic nice things happening, like a person, when Travis's moon and Taylor's sun coming together. Ideally, they like the masculine planet to belong to the masculine partner. And so that's kind of reversed here, as we have Travis being the moon person and Taylor being the sun. And I don't really think that's necessarily a bad thing to have somebody as, famous as Travis having some admiration for his woman. So that's kind of what this creates. It's like a very familiar, friendly feeling, but the moon person is always a little bit in more that more admiring person of the sun's qualities. Having her Venus conjunct, well, really loose conjunction, but in the same sign as Travis's Rahu is really nice, his north node. His relationship with Taylor is going to bring a lot of Venus into his life, a lot of luxuries, a lot of, femininity, a lot of beauty, romance, and comforts. So she's going to bring a lot of that into his world. They were born in the same year, so we see a lot of these slower moving bodies in the same sign. So that's also just helps people feel a similarity with each other, because the consciousness of all those planets should have that sign in common. And it is nice that his Jupiter is conjunct her moon. That's great for it being a really optimistic, joyful relationship. And then if her ascendant is Scorpio, a few years ago, some years back, her ascendant was listed as Capricorn. And that kind of checked out for me. I felt that was accurate. But now I'm all mixed up because it has her as a Scorpio ascendant. And I did some digging around, and yeah, there was a time listed at one point that was different. And I don't know, there was some biography release with that newer birth time, and it's like, maybe that was fake. Maybe she didn't want people to know her real birth chart. You never know. So, but if her ascendant is Scorpio, then his Venus is on her ascendant, and that's really nice to have. Oh, and I'm glad we finally got into this part, because now I can upset some people. Mars and Venus, so Mars-Venus conjunct, and like within half a degree. So that's a really tight conjunction. And I just don't find that a Mars-Venus contact is the explosive, passionate, synastry aspect that people often say it is. And you might be thinking, how could I possibly say that? Like, they're totally having fireworks together. Isn't this the reason? But I mean, maybe the reason is because they're both hot and famous and are like super physically attracted to each other. Okay, but I'm totally willing to explore this more. If you want to, show me some charts where you like the attraction or the sex appeal with a person was off the charts and they had this, I would love to look at the chart and see what else is happening and then compare it to this, because My experience is that by itself, it doesn't do as much as you would expect. And I think we should think about that Mars and Venus are very different. They complement each other well. And that's what I think that you could get out of this conjunction, is that the way that they want to use the house that this conjunction is taking place in and the sign is that they can be very productive together because, you know, one person is used to using Scorpio or that sign as a way to solve problems and go after what they want and make things happen. And then the other person has a lot of their desires in Scorpio. So they can be productive, but Ernst, someone who I learned most of this, well, especially this kuta compatibility from, he once made an off-the-cuff remark that Venus in the same sign was the best for, you know, like a romance and sexual compatibility. And I kind of see that as probably being more true. I personally have never, I don't think I've even ever talked to a guy with Venus in the same sign as me. So I don't have anything that I can say about that. But I did have an experience of talking with a guy whose Mars was conjunct my Venus, and someone whose Venus was conjunct my Mars, and I didn't really feel anything particularly special with those two. Maybe if things had gotten physical, it would have been different, but you can feel chemistry before you even get to, you know, anything physical. And it was more like with that Mars conjunct my Venus, it felt more like an intrigue, like, wow, we really use this sign in different ways, but we're both using that sign. We both have energy in that sign, obviously, but the way that we used it was very different. And I think that's kind of obvious, you know, Mars and Venus are different. I've also noticed when I look at people's compatibility that people who have the hard planets, or like, you know, Sun, Mars, I guess Saturn in the same houses, or people who have benefics, like the gentle planets, Jupiter, Moon, Venus in the same houses, that creates compatibility between people. Yeah, and I could go in more depth about that, but maybe I'll save it for a different type of video because I'm really getting off track from Taylor and Travis. As a way to wrap up this video, I did want to look at the charts to see if I could predict anything more solid happening with their relationship or a breakup. But because we don't have Travis's birth time, and because Taylor, there's 2 times floating around out there, I just don't think it would be worthwhile to attempt something like that. She currently has Mars going through her 7th house, and Saturn is casting its special aspect kind of to her 7th as well. So, I mean, she could go through a breakup this month, maybe, if Scorpio is indeed her ascendant. But, gosh, you know, her spouse planet, her Darakarka, if her birth time was even 2 hours off, if it was that other time, it would change the planet that was her spouse planet. And, you know, a lot of times people will meet that person they marry in the subdasha of their Darakarka, and it kind of looked like that was happening for her, but I just don't want to say that if her birth time could be off. So we'll see what happens with this. You know, with that compatibility, the kuta score being low, I just think that they are very different. He is, an athlete, a warrior. She is more of, she is an artist, poet, musician. So they're from different worlds, and I think at this point it's definitely part of their attraction to each other. But as time goes on, they may struggle to find like that similarity, that emotional similarity that keeps them together. And if they don't break up, I think the draw is the masculine and feminine planets coming together, and then feeling that polarity, that masculine feminine polarity together, and taking some satisfaction from that. Okay, that's all I have to say about it.